Chapter 1. Chapter House. Old Vespers. Darkness crept over the chamber walls, as the wax candle guttered in the lantern. Long fingers of shadow absorbed what little light illuminated the parchment Jerrol was skimming. Unable to read any more, he straightened up and stretched his aching back, his bones cracking in time with the creaking of his chair. That was his last candle, and he was getting nowhere. There were too many false trails and misleading references, but then, if he was trying to hide something, he would have done the same. The stone walls of the musty room pressed down on him, and he flipped the manuscript shut and rubbed his eyes. How the scholars spent hours at a time buried underground amazed him. He had always preferred to work in the open cloisters, though he supposed if he were a true scholar, he wouldn't notice. But then, he wasn't a scholar. Rising, he straightened out the silver robes of the Ladies' Order of Remargaren, which he wore over his silvery green uniform of the Ladies' Captain, picked up the lantern, and grimaced at the shimmer of the material poking out from the sleeves. He wore the same uniform the Sentinels wore, which was an unexpected side effect of his encounter with the Lady Leandri, who had claimed him as her captain. What that meant was yet to be determined. Still, Jerrol thought that it didn't bode well if the deity who protected their world believed she needed a new captain, especially as the last captain had so spectacularly disappeared with her when she had sundered the Bloodstone all those years ago. At the same time, she had encased the men and women of her personal guard in a protective sleep within their sentinel trees for over 3,000 years. Jerrol had accidentally woken one, a young man called Valerian. At his behest, Jerrol had figured out how to wake more sentinels, all of whom now reported to him as Leandri's captain, one of which, Tajiril, stood guard at the top of the stairs. The sentinels were adamant that he should be guarded at all times, a duty Valerian and Tajiril had taken upon themselves. Not that he was complaining. They were a reassuring presence behind his shoulder. He was only just beginning to discover who the ladies' sentinels were as he watched them adapt to a strange world, coping with unimaginable losses. He was surprised at how well they were adjusting. But then, their last memories had been of war, so maybe just waking up was a miracle in itself. He shivered. The fact that there were men and women still protected by their trees, waiting for him to awaken them, terrified him. Raising the lantern, Jerrol checked he had everything. As he turned to leave, the flickering glow of the lamp revealed a symbol over the door to the chamber that he had never noticed before. An engraving of a sentinel tree, with the crescent moon curving underneath. It was a complete image, the tree's roots and branches reaching for the moon, a sentinel and the lady as one. Instead of climbing the steps, he swung around and descended to the next level of chambers below. The stone corridor wended its way into the shadows, and he lifted his lantern to inspect the walls. Peering above the doors, he found the same symbol. A thought struck him, and he continued walking through the long corridor to the dead end that had been stumping the scholars. He raised the lantern, and there it was. He reached for the ceiling, but he was too short. Casting about for something to stand on, he remembered seeing a stool in one of the upper rooms. Returning with the stool, he leant against the wall and touched the engraving. The walls around him immediately began to shake. A low rumble grew, echoing in the narrow corridor, which culminated in the floor collapsing, taking Jerrol and his lantern down into the gaping darkness below. His lantern shattered, a high-pitched splintering amongst the deep thudding of the stone slabs descending around him. The fall took his breath away as he tumbled down a steep staircase, his shoulder taking the brunt of his landing. He slammed against a wall and came to an abrupt halt, gasping for breath. Tajiril, the sentinel guarding him, called out in alarm from above, as falling rubble blocked the narrow staircase as well as all light and sound. Heart racing, Jerrol untangled himself and choked on the dust as the ground settled.